Om Mano Nabudhi Indriyam Bhutani Tanmatram Bhutani Bhutapanchakam Aham Kritas Chapi Vyat Swarupakam Tam Isham Atmanam Upuiti Shashvatam Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. The one who seeks the supreme liberation dissolves the mind, the intellect, the body, the senses, and the gross and subtle elements back into the witness, dissolves the witness back into the Atman, the great self in all beings. For there shines Brahman. May that Brahman protect us, sustain us, and illumine our thought process. Reveal to us the essence of the teachings and free us from all impediments. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. So with that powerful dissolution chant from the Avadhuta Gita, we start into the second of our classes on how to tuck nature back to bed or back into the bed of the mind. Are we tucking nature back into soil? Well, we're doing it back into the soil of the mind, the mind field, it's called by the father of yoga. The chitta vrittis, the vibrations, need to be quelled to get to that peace that passes all understanding. And in that way, then we do a conscious exertion called sadhana, which puts us in a deeper state of meditation. And of course, Father of Yoga also says before you do that, you have to satisfy certain lower limbs or requisites. One of the important ones being how to render the mind less restless under the influence of rajas, one of the gunas, which is so prevalent today in society. So that's the main title of this two-class series, this being the second class. And the first, the subtitle has to do with being, having the mind seated with positive thoughts. So in the process of dissolution, the discrimination between klista and aklista vrittis, or positive and negative thoughts, is made first. And then you can dissolve the negative ones and make sure that they're not returning into your mind to cause you any samskaras or mental impressions that sometimes last for lifetimes in the case of worldly people. And then also accent those positive samskaras that come forward that are not pain-bearing. They're actually pleasure-bearing, which can be a problem on its own. But nonetheless, they're better and more positive. And in that way, you see how the control of the mind is affected by the yogi or yogini who's striving hard for perfection. That is to realize the perfection which is already within them. We call that Atman, and I just chanted about that. The Avadhut gave us those wonderful teachings. Mano, Nabudhi, Sharira, Indriyam, Bhutani, Nabhuta Panchakam, all of those are tattvas in the ancient Samkhya Yoga, principles that are insentient and invested with consciousness, no doubt, but to a greater or lesser degree, depending on their capacity to know Brahman. The mind's capacity and the intellect's capacity outstrips the senses, outstrips the five elements, and outstrips even the senses in the dream state. So it can be called upon to render us the greatest view of our internal being, our Atman, or our eternal self. That's the indivisible self, not the individual self that we look at. If the objection comes up in some mind-only schools that there is no independent, indivisible self, then we say in Vedanta, we're sorry, that's all there is. We inspected the internal realms and the external realm. All the Daharakasha that was talked about back before the Upanishads were even written down in the dissolution yogas like Taraka Yoga and Laya Yoga. They were practicing, quickly came to know about the inner realms and how to dissolve everything externally back into the internal. And that's what we're talking about when we say, let's put nature back to bed, back into the bed of the mind from which it came. And it also came in seeds, just like trees and so forth imitate that process out here when we come into the waking state, or when we're born in a body on the Bur Loka, the physical Loka. I was just writing today in the book called Matri Avatar, the Divine Mother incarnation, which Sri Ramakrishna and Sri Sharda Devi illustrate so well, writing about the Dharakasha and how the kings of heaven within were a later expression of that. When we were trying to remember that there isn't just one location for us, and that's in the body, in matter, but that those things like body and matter, as Dehavihut just shared with us, need to be dissolved back to their origins. And then those origins have to be inspected again, dissolved deeper into more long-lasting origins. And of all the origins, the mind is the greatest. And if you say, oh, my little old mind, how did nature get born out of all that? Well, you have to remember that your little old mind came from a collective mind, which is billions of souls strong. And that collective mind, which is billions of souls strong in many worlds, many billions, came from a cosmic mind. And in that cosmic mind, they often refer to that as a trinity of the powers of projection, sustenance, and withdrawal. That you're operating yourself when you go from waking, dreaming to deep sleep. And so we can't shut ourselves out of the quotient, can we? Or out of the process. They've always said that sadhana, or spiritual self-effort, is a matter of being a participant in your own spiritual life, rather than being rendered helpless by Maya or getting caught on a wheel of samsara. Yeah, samskara too, if they're negative. And also being subject to your karmas all the time, which bring you back and forth from earth to heaven to hell, and that loop that Lord Buddha talked about fairly recently, as far as Indian history goes, as the Kala Chakra, the wheel of time. So all of these things are, of course, to be stated, brought forward, contemplated, and then realized, and finally then implemented into life and mind, so that the light of consciousness can appear again there as it once did with great souls like Ramchandra and Sri Krishna, and now in this recent avatar, which I just mentioned, the Matri avatar called Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa Dev, that we are in good company when we have great souls like that speaking to us from the ancient wisdom, the Adidaiva Vidya, all the way up to the present wisdom called the Neo-Vedanta, and everything that's sandwiched in between. So we can then move on into our second class on this tucking the seeds back into the bed of our mind. Those would be seed thoughts, of course. Remember, Holy Mother has told us in this recent time that objects are just thought made concretized, or thought solidified. So nobody usually looks at an object and says, that's my thought. They say, that's an object. It's got an independent existence. I want to possess it, or I want it out of here, or I want to enjoy it, or I hate it. An object takes on all sorts of various appearances other than the one it really is, a manifestation of your own thought process. If you understand that at a very rudimentary level, with chairs and lamps and charts and everything that are holding such precious power, then you'll understand the meaning of the word and the words that shore up the word. That is wisdom, jnanam. and then you'll be able to wake up from this dream of relativity and the Kala chakra and Maya and karmas and negative samskaras and everything that people are complaining about in this day and age, which uh, there's really no needs to complain about because you have all the solutions inside of you. So the great solution that Avatut and other great souls, rishis they were called in India, proposed to us is this, detaching from things. So detachment is a very well-known property practice in both Vedanta and Buddhism, which are very close to each other, by the way. And so that detachment has to be seen as a little bit more than just, I have to take my mind off of objects because the objects still insinuate themselves to you in dream state. You're amongst objects there. And in heaven, they're still there. So they only disappear in deep sleep temporarily. And then they also disappear in what they call death, also temporarily if rebirth is what the soul is involved in. But they disappear forever in samadhi, in the highest samadhi. Those seeds are burnt. So Sri Ramakrishna said, if you take paddy, that's rice, and you strew it around before the rainy season, come back later, and it's a riot of growth. But if you take that paddy, put it in a pan, and just put it over the fire for a minute or so, then it destroys its power to germinate. Throw it down on the ground, come back after the rainy season, and nothing is there. Nothing germinated. So that's what the metaphor is for the soul who wants to stop the process of rebirth, particularly in ignorance. They may want to come back again to serve all beings or serve the Lord in all beings. They may come back to keep this wisdom in ready supply, like Shiva and his four padas. One of the padas is that I'm born again to keep this wisdom there in the human mind so that when the time comes for them to awaken to it, it'll be there for them. Nobody knows when that time to awaken happens. Even the mother says to the child, and the child says, will you wake me up when I hear the calls of nature? She says, well, you'll wake up yourself at that time. So probably it's that each soul has its predestined time of awakening in any given lifetime. And yes, the seers are a little bit impatient to hearken your awakening. That is, wake you up to the fact that it's in your hands at any time, especially when you enter the spiritual path. If you enter the spiritual path, then your foot is on the path, then you're already a great recipient for this Adi, original Daiva, divine wisdom that will free you for all times. And then you won't be watering seeds again in the mind that bring you back again into many bodies. The bodies come from seeds too, we know that. There's the moisture born, there's the sweat born, there's the egg born, there's the womb born. There's like 4 or 5 different kinds of beings that are born here on this plane, according to the Vedanta teachings. So, if you can become a human being, that's one of the highest births you can get here. Manushyatvam, you need a human body first and foremost to enter the spiritual path. Those are where some luminaries will eventually come from. That is humanity. So we have something very proud to be about, to crow about, as it were, in the world. That's our luminaries. I remember talking to my teacher, Swami Shishananda, once, and said, you Americans, you like your presidents. In India, we like our seers. So I like to hear that because you want somebody to cater and to nourish your spiritual life. And you haven't found people doing that in your family, with your ancestors, in the church, in the conventional religion, in politics and military and society, and amongst your friends. Nobody is out for your highest good. That's why they say only God loves you. So when you come into the periphery or the atmosphere of the lovers of God, they are God, so they love you, and you love them back. And that conduces to a very swift spiritual awakening for you. And you take to the Dharma, you turn that Dharma into Gyanam, you turn that Gyanam into Vijnanam, you get samadhi from that Vijnanam, highest wisdom. So that in the process of doing that, what you're doing is first of all neutralizing all the negativities in your thoughts, which gave birth to the worlds and the objects. And then after that, you have the positive version of your mind that's still creating worlds. And that's the difference between Maya and Leela. Before you were bound to the world and suffering was a part of the package. Now you're sporting in the world and bliss is a part of the package and suffering is diminishing, is going away. And so you have this great sport that the souls, the illumined souls are showing you. Leela, it's called. And then there's the Mahali of the great souls, like Ramakrishna and Christ and Buddha. Their lives have become a matter of uh, great attention for millions of souls. They're still looking back to Sri Ram, who is one of the early sages, and he's still got millions of followers. I can sing you a dozen songs about him that I learned in India. So basically, this process of stripping the mind of its negativities and then getting to the positive thoughts and then starting to dissolve them back into their origins is what I just chanted about. Basically, you're taking up the mind and its thought process, the chitta vrittis, vibrations, and you're trying to quell the negative ones and you're trying to enhance the positive ones. And then when that's done, you can go beyond both the gold chain and the iron chain, as Vivekananda called it, and begin to dissolve the whole process back into you. We stopped there in the first class when we looked at this chart, the miscible nature of cosmic principles. So what you're actually dissolving back into you is the expression of all these tattvas or principles that your mind in cahoots with millions of other minds got together and decided would turn solid. They were liquid in your dreams. They were gaseous in your deep sleep, as it were. Now they've turned solid in your waking state. And so you and a few other of your spiritual compatriots want to get together and start to dissolve that process and become illumined, like they did in India. They're called rishis, the great truth lovers and freedom seekers. They reached the goal in their culture before they even wrote it down with yogas like Advaita Yoga, Laya Yoga, Mantra Yoga was there early on. We've looked at that in a seminar recently, the flames of the fires of yoga, and how they started out before they were even written down, and then how they morphed to the time of the Upanishads, how they morphed further out towards contemporary times as the age got darker and darker, and people became more forgetful and forgetful. These yogas had to be made available to people with lesser understanding than in the ages of light that came earlier. It's really different the way we think about time in India than the way science thinks about it and biology and so forth. The Western mind thinks about it. If you go back in time, according to the Western savants, then as my teacher said, they have me thinking that I have to go to the zoo to see my ancestors. In other words, you go back, and you were once a chimp or an ape. And before that, you were a paramecium and so forth. And when you go back in time in India, you're going back inward to the origins of things. That's what this is all about. These principles themselves, out of which evolution evidently took place, because we're not Xing it out of the equation. We're just saying it's a very limited look at your true nature and the way the process of involution works after evolution has taken place on one planet. What to speak of the Daharakasha, which is billions of inner planets made of thought. Heaven is made of thought. It's just very high thought. Come to know that you have to dissolve even the high thought back into a formless essence. That's the direction where everything goes. Everything is miscible into Brahman. So nature is all dissolvable into Brahman, Sri Ramakrishna used to say. So that means it came out of the mind, the cosmic mind at one time, and it sported for a while. It had its play. The vibration gave up, and it started to become a non-vibration, being going back to its source. But beings lost track of the fact that that's what was happening to their mental facility, that they themselves were in charge of that chariot that was going out to the mind field, and that they could take it and take it back to the source at one time. So we looked at this in terms of two other charts last week, and I asked you to review them so that you keep current with the class series. But we didn't finish this chart. But you see that if we're tucking seeds back into the bed of the mind, you can see that this yellow dotted line is a great seed. That's kind of why I put this chart together. And the wisdom teachings of it came from Sri Krishna and his teachings to Uddhava in the Uddhava Gita, if you want to look it up for yourself. You can see there that there's a great dotted line, sort of like an eggshell, around everything that possibly came out of a formless origin and turned into form. So in India, we look at manifestation as having started in formless condition and then turning into form and going back to formless. Those two kinds of formlessness are called prakriti, and or two types of form and formlessness are called prakriti and unmanifested prakriti. Pradhana, and you look at things like the Trinity, the cosmic mind, and the Word, and study them in our tradition in order to get some idea of how that process worked, from causal to subtle to gross. Come to find out that that's how your 24-hour day is based too. You start out, in say in the waking state, because that's where your consciousness is posited. Then you go into dream, and everything shifts to a more liquid flow. Then you go into deep sleep and everything's gone. Then you come back to the dream, then you come back to waking. Every 24 hours this happens in a normal cycle. Abnormal cycle means deep sleep doesn't happen to many people. And they don't get that reflection that get 4 or 5 hours of formlessness would give you. So, but a supernormal state of all that, beyond abnormal and normal, would be that your consciousness would take the ride with you. That is, you would be doing mantra and you'd be doing meditation in your waking state, so that your dream state would become more illumined, so that your deep sleep would become clear and you could see through the dream state to the deep sleep state, and then the deep sleep state into Turiya, the fourth state, which is that nirvana and samadhi that Buddha and Vedavyas talked about. So here is this great egg. We looked, I think, everything in it already. So this is just a quick revisitation to get us back on the track of the topic and its title. As the Uddhava Gita says, whatever things come into being, minute or vast, all partake of two principles of Purusha and Prakriti. So the Purusha is the ultimate reality of the Mahapurusha's formlessness with a capital F. That's the reality of everything. Out of that comes a seed that's kind of two-sided, which is called formless nature, which is its seeds, and then nature that is going to be manifested and expressed. The seeds are going to be watered by billions of minds, and they're going to germinate in the soil of the collective mind, just like seeds are germinated here and sprout forth things. And the thought process of billions of souls are going to think about that, and they're going to start to be involved in the projection of all the worlds in time and space. Thank God there's a great matrix overlooking that. But we can't make a mistake to say that God created the worlds. That's a misfiance. God remains acreate and ever as the ultimate witness of everything, which you will find out if you're able to dissolve everything back into it. That's called samadhi. Krishna goes on to say that from which a thing originates and into which it dissolves abides also in the intermediate state. That alone is real. But the modifications all have a mere phenomenal existence. So this is the foundation, the reason why you would want to dissolve things is because you want to see that which is steady in the midst of beginnings, middles, and ends. People are in this caught in the cycle times think, oh, there it is, it began. Here I am in the middle of it. Oh, it's about to end. So those are attended by shock, surprise, delight, and disappointment. See, so it's called creation, preservation, and destruction, the old way of saying it. But we like to say uh, projection from the cosmic mind, sustenance, and then withdrawal or dissolution. It's that dissolution part that we're not familiar with very well. People like, say, the birth of the baby, then they have to help the baby grow up. They don't like the passing away of the adult into old age disease, because this is all based on consciousness of the body and unconsciousness of the mind that produces bodies and that produces all bodies, including everything that's in this egg, was produced by the cosmic mind. It was then nourished by the collective mind, and it was then enjoyed and suffered by the individual minds. So that's a process that some souls want to snap the chains of. They want to snap the chains of birth and death and realize their true nature, and then come back here and find out where their fears and doubts went to. You see, as my teacher used to say. All these things brought together are brought together by me, act together, make up an oval structure, which is an excellent abode for me. All this egg, in this egg, floating on ethereal waters, I dwell. And that's the highest form of God, called Ishvara, in this case, Krishna himself, pointing to his Vishnu form, his Mahavishnu form, as the great sustainer of this huge egg in which he himself dwells. And this is how he explains it to his disciple Uddhava in the Uddhava Gita section. The reason that I took this chart up to finish it and get it started again was really this beautiful excerpt at the end of the Uddhava Gita, which I wanted to read. You'll have to keep your attention focused on it because it's a long sentence or a couple sentences. Plant animal bodies are dissolved into food. Food gets dissolved into seeds, seeds into earth, and earth into odor. Odor is miscible into water, water into liquidity, sap into fire, fire into color, color dissolves into air, air into touch, touch into the ethers, and ether into sound particles. The senses dissolve into their causes. The gods, the senses dissolve into their causes, the gods. The gods, my friend, dissolve into the mind. Sound and mind meld into egoism, and that into intelligence. That noble intelligence dissolves into the gunas into prakriti. Prakriti dissipates into eternal time. That time is held in the omniscient being, the Mahapurusha. That being, I am, the Atman. Atman rests in itself. So there's really a very thorough and complete rendering of how everything starts at its evolved place and dissolves back in involution style back to the source. We got that in the 24 cosmic principles from Lord Copula in a more simpler version. So if you used to think, oh, all the 24 tattvas of Sattva Yoga is too much for me to think about, then try this one on, because it begins to bring in the tanmatras and instead of just saying as I just chanted, you dissolve the subtle senses and the gross senses and the subtle elements and the gross elements back into the Atman. And that starts out the process. And then you find that everything's held in the mind. And then the mind can empty itself out of all seeds. That is, it can destroy the germinating power of seeds in the mind. And that's called a free soul. So this is a beautiful excerpt here from the Uddhava Gita by Sri Krishna, told to his disciple Uddhava. I think that if you remember what we already looked at previously in the chart, that pretty much puts us back on track, um, and tends to drive us on toward this main principle of how seeds get dissolved back into the bed of the mind, not just the individual mind, but the collective mind. Vyasti samasti, not just that, but vyapi, it's called, back into the cosmic mind, the mahat. And in that way, then everything has found its origin. Even sentient things, even insentient things find their origin that way. They're brought back to their seed essence. The only thing is that the sentient things called souls do not get brought back to dissolve in nature. That is, unless they don't know the process, then they commit kind of a spiritual suicide. They think nature, they die with nature, they come back born in nature. This is a kind of dream life that they're living all the time over and over again. That's where the ideas of samsara and maya and kala chakra came from. When great souls like Buddha and others look at people involved in these cycles and not being able to get off the wheel of birth and death and suffered there, and not being able to get off of the wheel of heaven, earth, and hell either, and suffered there. Suffered means they had pleasure and they had pain. Those two formed karmas, and those karmas formed seeds. And the germinating power of these seeds will then brought to the next lifetime. And they joined billions of other souls who believed also in the reality of physical things only. They didn't know that there were subtler worlds to visit. They forgot about them when they came here. Or they only had just a faint semblance of remembrance of what heaven was like, or what formlessness was like. And so Mother said, well, here's deep sleep. I'll remind you what formlessness is like, and how your true nature is empty of all these things. So the yoga of emptiness, called abhava yoga, is the yoga that attains the taking of everything that's solid and everything that came out of what was solid and dissolved it back in and turned it into the miscible nature of cosmic principles back to the source. But what we're interested in more is the soul and how it doesn't go back to nature, that it has a different choice to make, that it must go back to sentient intelligence, to living intelligence. And in order to do that, it'll use the fire of yoga to do it. And before it can do that, it needs to, as we just started this second class out saying, dissolve the negativities that are in those seeds. So this chart is called the adept disassembling of mental negativity. These are these clistovritis, these are these clistovritis that occupy the mind, that it's sort of like watering a seed that has distortions in it. And so you get very strange fruit or strange vegetables out of it. It has various impurities in the seeds. So what comes out of it when you water it turns into various strange manifestations that are inherent in the seed. So, unfortunately, it would also happen in terms of human beings producing children. They have seeds that they're watering that have these defects in them, and they will manifest themselves in very different kinds of levels of consciousness or lack thereof. So it's very important then for the one who wants to reach freedom, not only to dissolve the seeds of nature back, but to dissolve the seeds in the mind, psychologically speaking, back and purify them. So you see here a beautiful image of Mother Kali gleefully destroying the three great demons of the human mind, doubt, ignorance, and fear. These three persist. In fact, if you've heard of the curtain of nescience teaching, then you find out that in the Tantra Sadbhava and other scriptures, Lord Shiva comes forth and says the curtain of nescience we've found is made up of doubt, ignorance, and fear, those three things. And what expands it? Brooding on doubt, ignorance, and fear. What thins it out is getting rid of the brooding on doubt, fear, and ignorance. So the mind is watering these seeds with its own form of liquid. That's called brooding. It's got fear and doubt and ignorance in its thinking process. So when it waters the seeds that's in its own mind, that will turn into worlds and objects, situations, relationships, people, babies, and so forth, then it's watering the negative propensities that are in those seeds in the mind. So then you have to then go into the mind, take these seeds and purify them before they get a chance to manifest their negativities. So that's why we call on the Divine Mother. She's pouring forth their pure love rays on one hand and pure wisdom ray on the other, and destroying the doubts, ignorance, and fears within us. The great disciple or devotee of the Mahayogini here, the Mahamaya, the Mahashakti, the goddess of the universe, the Divine Mother of the worlds, called by so many different names. I'm just borrowing some from English, but there's many hundreds and thousands of names for her in Sanskrit. So they knew about her, and they know that when you take refuge in her, that she will afford you and gift you these great yogas by which you can destroy the negativities in the seeds of the mind, and do it with her wisdom yoga, doing it with her mantra yoga, doing it with her meditation yoga, putting these together and making sure the mind becomes chit shuddhi, right? It's not chit ashuddhi, impure mind, but chit shuddhi. So the Upanishads start off saying that. The minds of two kinds here, pure and impure. So we want to look to those beings with pure minds and see how they rendered their minds pure. Those are the great souls that we take as our ishtams and we take as our exemplars, and who come to earth and help people to awaken from this problem, this triple problem of doubt, fear, and ignorance. You see there the lists on the bottom. I'm here at the top, starting from the bottom. First of all, you have to perceive the possibility of overcoming your negative thoughts. Most people would just give freedom to them. They don't have the discrimination of turning their thoughts pure. They just go ahead and let the mind think as it will. So it's a kind of indiscriminate activity and relationship they have with humanity and with relationships. And so these negativities get a free rein to manifest themselves. And that's what you're seeing in the world like today, in all quarters, in this darkened Kali Yuga that's happening to us right now. There's this indiscriminate people giving rise to all sorts of desires based on negativities in the seeds of their mind. And if you move inward away from that, then you have to take refuge in the mother of wisdom, because wisdom destroys ignorance. That's just how it's put. Let's say that basically conventional methods, conventional religion, and so forth, do not remove these negativities in the mind. You'd have to go to the powerful source of yoga, the Mahayogini herself. Say, well, here's how you remove those, my dear. And that way she would begin to awaken you up to your true nature by stages. So consciously taking refuge in the goddess starts this process, inward process, forward, moving for the aspirant, for the dedicated aspirant. And the mind becomes stabilized with concentration. So, na hi gyanena sadrisham pavitram iha vidyate, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, of all the purifiers possible in the worlds, Knowledge is the highest and best. So he wants you to take this knowledge that you get from the storehouse of knowledge, which is the Divine Mother of the universe, and begin to use it to purify the seeds in the mind. You can sing about that even, uh, which we often do. This song by one of the great poet saints of India says, "O playful mind, meditate on the mystery of Divine Mother. Use any method yogically that you please, or just simply breathe day and night her holy name as the living seed of transforming power." So it gets right to the source about seeds. It also uses ajapa yoga to do it. She's already mentioning any method you want there. So if you want to use these powerful methods that she affords you, or you can just breathe ajapa, her name, in and out naturally all the time, and therefore go beyond the seed of all seeds to the realization of your own true nature. It goes on to say, all sounds you hear are natural mantras. They repeat spontaneously as the whole world worships her. So everyone's breathing naturally the name of the Mother all the time. Saham, Saham, I am she am I, is the great mantra in the Rig Veda, the earliest of all scriptures. So naturally they're breathing in and out like that and worshiping her spontaneously. There are all these natural mantras that are being said. All sounds are to be heard that way. We just looked at this beautiful chant that all these processes of earth to water and water to fire and fire to air and air to ether, end up in sound particles, right? That's how Krishna described it. At the head of that whole preliminary list of tattvas to dissolve was sound particles. That's a beautiful way that he puts it. It's the Shabda Yoga or Nada Yoga method that was prevalent before the Upanishads were even written down. The Mantra Yoga was there in the earliest times. So this is what's being said here, that all sounds are her natural mantras, if you can see it that way, and dissolve everything back into them. Goes on to say, Goddess Kali constitutes the letters of every alphabet in every language, and each letter secretly bears the flower of her name. So the seeds turn into flowers, and the gardener is happy, ecstatic with these beautiful bouquets of flowers that he offer back to her in the altars and shrines and temples and churches of the world. And so it's all getting back to that idea of this great seed that's lying temporarily fallow in the human mind, but then it gets watered and the negativities that were there begin to dissolve, and all the positive attributes, qualities in the Dharma mega samadhi in the mind begin to come forth. And beautifully sung too. Monopoli Bhajakali Icha Hoi Torjaya Chari Guru Data Mahamantra Divani Shijapakori Monopoli Bhajakali Icha Hoi Torjaya Chari Guru Data Mahamantra Divani Shijapakori Monopoli Bhajakali Monopoli Bhajakali. It's a rare bhajan or piece of sacred music or sacred song in India that is unlike most of the others of the dozens, maybe hundreds I've learned from India, because it has this specific accent on the seeds of the mind and how they're actually, the true meaning of them is in the letters. And in the letters are these mantras, these mantras of wisdom. And that's what we're missing in our English inspection of languages, is we only go to the letters, but we don't go into the interior of the letter and find out that that's where the wisdom resides, and she's placed it there. So that when you meditate on a letter, rather than just study it out of a book like we do in the West, all of a sudden that letter expands inside of you, and you see that sound and meaning and object and movement and everything that has to do with these basic tattvas that you're dealing with in the worlds can all be dissolved back, like earth into water, water into fire, fire into air, air into ether, those into the senses of tasting, touching, hearing, smelling, and seeing, with hearing at the root of those, along with everything that heaven is made out of, called tanmatras, all the subtle matter that's there in the mind in the dream state. All of this gets dissolved back in. When you become aware that all of this is existing in the mind as a seed, and that all words are, as it says here, all words are her natural mantras. So when you took up a series of words and got a mantra from your teacher, in most cases you didn't get this teaching. Either they said, if they're a good teacher, they said, well, they'll come to understand it as they find her, who's the mother of all mantras. They contact her, she'll inform them intuitively of what the mantra is. Otherwise, you had to, on your own initiative, begin to study the scriptures and uncover words of power, like Om, Aim, Hrim, Shrim, Klim, Krim, Hum, Fat, Swaha, and so forth. Find all of these ancient words that you can't find uh, any word pre-existing them. See, they were the first words. Om was the first word. And that way you're beginning to trace and everything back to its origin, which is in the beginning was the word, as Jesus told them in the Middle East later. So when you found that, then you decided, I'm not satisfied with beginnings. I want to go beyond beginnings, middles, and endings, which is what we just heard Krishna say in this chart, right? When you find out that beginnings, middles, and endings, what do you find out by studying them? That there's a presence that's unending in all of them, that it's there before the beginning, anterior to life and mind is the Atman, as the Mundaka Upanishad says. It's there at the end, after the soul so-called dies. It goes back to its source, and so therefore the soul's eternal. It comes back again if it wants to, or if it has to. In the middle too, then, Krishna says, you find out that was Vishnu there. That was the Lord, sustaining everything by the Mother Shakti's power. And so beginnings and middles and ends then become a triputi that become an opening to higher thinking, higher reality. It's a kind of wisdom that destroys this critter here in the middle. She's leaving him to the last. Basically, that root, ignorant, mula vidya, is the cause of all the worlds. India is the one tradition, the one country whose philosophy declares that all of this began out of ignorance, not out of love. So we have to get rid of a certain kind of naivety about that, that if these worlds are not to our liking, if we're become weary of them, if we're suffering in them, if we learn the lessons of birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death that Lord Buddha wanted us to learn with the Four Noble Truths, and other great souls have talked about this, the five kleshas, the six passions, the eight fetters, the evolutes of Maya. If all of these that we found out about in our exploration of all the worlds that exist back within us in waking, dreaming, and deep sleep in the form of seeds does not come up to our expectation and we're not satisfied with it, then something's missing, you see. And we forgot that as Krishna just told us in the Uddhava Gita, all of nature came out of the gunas. They came out of modes. And all of those modes are back in unmanifested nature, in seeds. Then we wake up to the art of tattvas, principles. And probably even back in the time of the age of Lord Copula, he was looking at us and saying, looking at the people then and saying, oh, there's going to be some dark ages coming here. I better write this down because those great yogas, Tarka Yoga and Laya Yoga and Mantra Yoga and so forth, those great yogas had were practices they were doing before they wrote down the Upanishads. And in that way, then, they were doing these dissolution practices early on. As soon as they found out that there were inner realms and channels leading to them that were done by their own consciousness flowing along nadis inwardly to worlds, centers, chakras, lotuses, however you want to put it, then at that point they said, oh, I can dissolve all of this in an instant. It all came out of me, it goes back into me, and I'm left over in the end. I'm watching the process, and I'm also taking it back into me. I am hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder with Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva in this process. And the mother is conducting it all. See, under her auspice, I take refuge because she's the one that's allowing all this to take place. If I get in touch with her, I can destroy the negative part of it in it, and I can be in bliss, ananda. I can be in peace, shanti, shanti, shanti. I can be in my highest consciousness. I am Atma Brahma. This self is Brahman. And remove not only just negativities, which shouldn't have been there in the first place, but false ways of thinking that got into my head and made me suffer. So all of this about this process on the way up here, that you consciously take refuge in the goddess, then and study the revealed scriptures with a viveka guru. And don't do it with a guru who wants your money, wants your fame, wants all of this. Do it with a viveka guru. In fact, Vivekananda would be a good, perfect guru to start with. Is even named after that beautiful process. And then you'll gain the Jnana wisdom. You see, that's what destroys ignorance in you. That dark can't exist in the presence of light. In the same way, ignorance, avidya, can't exist in Jnanam. If you put Jnanam in your mind and install it there, instill it there, and keep it there, then one day you wake up and said, my ignorance is gone, gone, utterly gone, which is the line of a beautiful song we like to sing. So that's a good thing to accent here. You see, basically, if I keep the higher wisdom, the Jnanam in my mind, then ignorance will go away. It's just a matter of persisting in the practice. Beyond that, then it's just to combine love of Kali with the focused wisdom to dissolve these negativities outright. And they dissolve persistent impediments via focused intensity. You can go as deep as to dissolve the very idea of birth and death from your mind. No more rounds, no more birth in the womb of matter for me. Only emanation from my divine mother, right? Lines I've quoted for 40 years in SRV that now we're taking into a new light to show you why I quoted them, why I heard them from my gurus, and why they made such an impression on me. No more emanation from the womb of matter for me, Prakriti. Only emanation from my divine mother, Kali, 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 whom I just sang about. Monoboli, Bhajakali. O mind, meditate upon her. Finally, you'll reach that rare consummate knowledge that ignorance has no substance. How to bring you there quick? Sri Ramakrishna looked at you and said, when you complain to him about the darkness of your ignorance, ignorance has no substance. Think about an explorer in a dark cave, a cave that's been dark 1,000 years. And the explorer goes in with a torch, with a ray. How long is that darkness going to last in the cave when you do that? It's gone instantaneously. So that's what this highest wisdom does for the ignorance that you're complaining about in your mind due to the existence of these three unreal qualities: doubt, fear, and ignorance. None of them have any substance. You're the only one with substance, and that substance is called the Atman. On the other side, you see the dynamics and the experiences one goes through from the bottom up. At that time, people see through surface pleasures, as I was just saying. Why are these things persisting in me? Because I'm still attached to the dualities of pleasure, followed by pain, followed by more pleasure. Two, I observe the connection between pain and pleasure, and then I know how my karma is born. Three, I seek to balance the mind's tendencies. And that's where you begin to look at things like I'm 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 lazy today, and later today I'm restless. At sundown I feel fine. So the three gunas have appeared to me throughout my 24-hour day, over and over again in cycles. And so I began to think that I should be able to dissolve the mind's tendencies in that way and get to the heart of the gunas and send them back as seeds into unmanifested prakriti from where they came. Take them all back into the ignorance from which they sprang. Then the mind and intellect get together, the ego matures, and thoughts become positive. That's the next entry. Finally, maintain equanimity amidst all changing circumstances. There's a good test for us. A lot of us have followed this path and maybe have been into it for years, decades even. And it all this comes down to this test, that the gunas throw at us, nature throws at us, and the mind's obstinacy lets us in on. Basically, it said, can I remain the same at all times, no matter what's going on out there in nature, in the seeds of ignorance, that so many billions of people hold on to with a selfish death grasp, like scientists holding on to physical particles because they discovered that that's what objects were made of, and they can't let that go now. And find out that there are particles of wisdom in every word, and that's what gives the objects its objectivity. Is that they're vibrating, and not just with atomic particles and subatomic particles that eventually will let you down because they're changing at a billionth of a second. They're vibrating with eternity, with infinity, particles that are eternal wisdom that will never let you down if you realize them as being the foundation of your thoughts, of your words, and finally as your very actions when you learn the art of akarma, how not to suffer cause and effect anymore. So all of that helps the mind maintain its equanimity in the face of changes. Does it get any better than this, as they say? Yes, it does. It helps the soul to open this third eye of wisdom, the Jnana Chakshu, the eye in the center of the forehead, as the Taraka Yoga said early on. They got very interested in that center between the two eyebrows, the Advaita Upanishad said. And when they got interested in that, then they realized that that's a portal into highest reality. That's where Brahman exists, in that light that they saw shining through the opening of the Agya chakra. That is, wisdom is over there, realization takes its place, Agya. There is no Jnanam anymore. It's just the light of consciousness, and I am that. And that aligns the true self, Atman, with Brahman. So if you said that, well, I dissolved the five elements back into the subtle elements and the five senses back into the subtle senses, and I dissolved all 20 of those back into the mind with the power of the intellect helping me, and the ego got ripened. And I dissolved that back from the ego into the witness. And then I dissolved all 24 of those back into the Atman. Then I realized that that Atman at that point is one with Brahman, and there was nothing more to dissolve. That's the end of the game of Maya. That's the end of the cycle of samsara. That's the dissolution of all the negative and positive seeds that are in the mind. That's even the end of the great mind itself. As you become beyond mind, that's what they call no mind. And therefore, that identification with pure awareness and witness consciousness happens alternatively. If the soul wants to stay disembodied, videha mukti, the freedom of always being disembodied, it can do that. But like Vivekananda, a perfect soul coming back into the body again, he might want to identify himself with witness consciousness again, so that he, like the Buddha, could see everything that was going on with billions of sleeping souls in the bed of the mind. Right? Those souls that weren't able to dissolve everything, all seeds of negativity back into the bed of their mind, back here to the beginning one, they didn't even perceive the possibility of overcoming their negativities. It was too hard, so they just let it run riot. See, that's called chaos. It's called um, uh, uh, root ignorance. So it said everything was then in the worlds get born out of root ignorance and everything suffers. That chaos is on them. But Mother doesn't like that. She won't allow that. So she provides these opening of different centers and the dissolution of everything's back in them to their seed states, all the way back to the great seed that we looked at. Krishna says, I'm perfectly happy there for a while, abiding in that great seed with all of this play going on. That's the sport of consciousness. It cannot be denied. And only one thing will trump it. That's going into pure conscious awareness, as said here. That's the highest of all experiences, probably even beyond experience. There's a beautiful song, too, that is sung by her devotees here at the bottom of this chart as we look to the death of doubt, fear, and ignorance. Goddess Kali advances directly into the stronghold of the enemy and stares down the many demons arrayed against her with her gaze of victory. Her enthusiasm for battle remains fresh, her skill in combat unique and invincible. This poet trembles, barely able to sing. The realm of relative existence is engaged in ceaseless war. Death and its minions are attacking with superior forces. I cannot resist their overwhelming illusion. My warrior mother alone can save me. So this is where Sharanagata Dinar Ta Paritrana Parayane Sarva Sharte Harari Devi Narayani Namostute comes in. The great slokas and sutras and sayings of the seers and sages about divine reality call forth the presence of the Divine Mother at the very foundation of our being. She's the very existence of existence itself. And it's not only a trinity like this that dies, but the highest trinity of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva looks to her for the highest aid. When these nicely described here, when these minions that are attacking with their superior forces overwhelm me and make me think that they have any kind of substance whatsoever, and she reduces them to ashes with her rays of love and wisdom. So beautiful chart there. All she's posited always in pure conscious awareness. And as the last quote here says, she races across the green and blue planet. She leaps into the blackness between stars, devouring every participant in this war of illusory opposition. Is that a nice way of describing dissolution, right? How she will take you back to the origin of all things and even dissolve the seeds of origin back into her. That's this precious Mother Kali who has come to us in the form of Sri Ramakrishna and Sri Sharda Devi, and the direct disciples there as the ideal Mother Kali here in the Kali Yuga. In the time remaining, we can look to the deep sleep state because that's where these seeds are existing. And you can see here, we can take a quick journey through our own consciousness as it appears to us. That is, how awareness at the highest level absorbs deep sleep back into it. Of course, this deep sleep has to be conscious. So you can see this is set up as a as a soul coming out of the dark clouds of waking, where ignorance, fear, and doubt are still there as clouds covering the consciousness. And see there that this soul is looking away or deeper than uh, this seed. See, here's one of the seeds that's probably many-faceted and probably responsible for beings not awakening, as we said here. Don't even awaken to the possibility of getting rid of negativities. They'll just forbear the negativities along with the things they get in nature called resources and happiness and objects and money. So you see it's pretty well set there. That seed consists of lands, resources, wealth, power, and pleasure. So that's the seed of the world, you might say, and the belief that the world is real. And going after that in over lifetimes with your ancestors, constantly coming in and out of that. That's called basically the ignorant waking state, Jagrat. It's very much similar to the word Jagat. Jagat means the world. Jagrat means the waking state in the world. So it's easy to remember the Sanskrit seed words for those kinds of predicaments that humanity's gotten itself into. It got embodied, it saw nature, it saw that nature was, it thought that nature was the only reality. It wanted to get all things from nature, not knowing that nature came from itself, and both of them came from Brahman, right? So there's a triple covering of ignorance in the curtain of nations, not just in the terms of ignorance, doubt, and fear and brooding upon it, but also that they're expecting that nature is real, and they don't see that it came from them, and they don't see that both of them came from consciousness. So there's some disconnects going on there when the soul born into nature sees nature. Your parents, which were yogis and yoginis, rishis and rishinis, that were Shivas and Shaktis in India in the early time, would immediately make you study the wisdom when you were able to understand words, so that you wouldn't get caught in that lurch. In the way we see that nowadays is in Tibet, basically. You see the Tibetans, monks are taking their very young children, and some of them are becoming monks, and at a very early age are memorizing the scriptures. In recent times, it's very rare in recent times, because most people say in Tibet, under the press of the materialism of the West, are wanting their children to get success, have careers, come to the West, and so forth. Nobody wants to go back to the original ancient East to learn these teachings that come from ancient scriptures that are replete with Gyanam, that know that the words there are replete with the power to awaken from the sleep of ignorance. That is, to make this waking state and this dreaming state that follows it lucid. That has to be done by awakening the ancient wisdom, Adi, original, Daiva, divine, Vidya, wisdom. Adi Daiva Vidya. It's a beautiful three-part word in Sanskrit that holds the key to most everything that has to do with awakening from the sleep of ignorance in this day and age. So this soul is beginning to look beyond that. So if you look beyond it, then you're looking towards what they call heaven. And that only takes you halfway to the goal. and according to the Indian seers. You're seeing actually the Dharakasha, is what the ancient rishis of India said, long before they were talking about heaven, because the gods were in the heavens. As Krishna just told us, right? All of this is in the gods, and the gods are in your mind. And this is a beautiful part of that quote that we just read from the Uddhava Gita. All of these things, all the way to sound particles and everything, are in the gods. And then where does he go next? The gods are in you. So air, earth, fire, water, ether, the deities of those five elements, waking, tasting, touching, hearing, and smelling, the five senses that are called Indriyas, are in Indra, the god of the gods. And all of these, where do you find them? Inside of yourself. All of the gods get dissolved back into you. The powers are yours. And of course, then you're going to find all of them, including yourself, back in the great goddess. So this is what begins the process of awakening up. When people begin to look beyond the awaking state and Earth with its concerns that are very limiting and beginning to run out even in today's age, as we take nature and begin to pollute it and sap it of its resources, thinking that that will make us happy and make us into a utopian society. Now, what's recently with this? Oh yeah, so we're going around the moon in a rocket. You see, that's the next step of science, right? Let's shoot some people up there and go around the moon. We went to it. Now we're going to go around it. Meanwhile, back on Earth, everything's falling apart. And so this is is this the highest run of what you call intelligence? We have a different particle theory that we're interested in. We have a different science that we're interested in. We have a different psychology called yoga that we're interested in. And we have a different goal than you. And this is the eternal goal, talked about by the inestimably great souls that nobody can deny: Christ, Buddha, Krishna, Vivekananda, and Ramakrishna. These souls have been telling us that this is the eternal goal, and we want to go back to it, and we can go back to it in our involutionary process, back to the source, guided by the Mother Shakti herself, who is all the energy here. She's the energy of your body, called prana, energy of your senses. She's the energy of your thoughts, chitti shakti. And she's the very living, intelligent particle in your intellect that has allowed you to turn thoughts into objects and worlds. So you begin to look towards her, and you get little intimations of that as you go into dreaming. There you can see their heaven-bound ancestors, called the Pitris, and the collective mind is going back and forth in this process of waking to dreaming and back again. As I've often said, you don't really need to go into meditation or die to get to heaven. Just go to sleep. Your dreams are heaven. There's no other place you can find heaven except in your dreams. That's also, by the way, where hell is. When you have nightmares in your dreaming state, that's hell. So you go into heaven and hell when you close your eyes and go to sleep tonight. There's no other location for it. You can't find it anywhere up above you or down below you. It's within you. Kings of heaven are within you. I don't know how long it's going to take for people to understand that. So now try and shut your eyes tonight with the mantra on your mind and on your breath. Your breath is important, right? Give the body up. It's not that important. Just have it be healthy and breathe right and come back to it as one position that you man. One asana for the body, several for the mind. That's what you need. And so as you do that, you're beginning to render your own consciousness lucid. That is, light is beginning to come into your dream states. So I woke up at 4 this morning. I always wake up at 4 and then lay there for a while or go to meditate for a while. And then I might go back to sleep. And when I go back to sleep, I always have dreams of light where my students are there and where I'm teaching them, or I'm teaching something in between 5 and 6 or 7 when I get up. So this light always comes to you and suggests itself into your dreams if you think about it in your waking state. So people used to ask me that back in the 90s and so forth. We want to be lucid dreamers. How do we do that? I said, so be lucid wakers, you know. Uh, think about consciousness and God and gods and practices and meditations and stuff in your waking state. And then your dreams will become lucid. Otherwise, it's random. You could put $1,000 in the bank today in a waking state, it'll still be there tomorrow, probably. But in the dreaming state, you put $1,000 in a bank, in your dream bank, it's not going to be there tomorrow for you. You're not even going to think about it. So that's how random people's dreams are. But consciousness is stationary in beginnings, middles, and endings. Krishna just told us that in the Uddhava Gita. There's the one thing you want to look for in beginnings, middles, and endings. You're not looking for birth, you're not looking for life, and you're not looking for death. Those are other words for beginnings, middles, and endings, right? Birth, life, and death. What you're looking for is what's stable in all three of them. What persists? What's there with you when you're born, it's there with you when you live, and it's there with you when you die, is your Atman, is your true nature. And meanwhile, the mind goes on with its processes of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. Let's look how it goes into deep sleep. Oh, what do I see there? A bunch of seeds falling into the head. You see, oh, that pretty much says it right there. These primal seeds of deep sleep exist in the mind's causal state. That's why we have three bodies in Vedanta. We have a physical body that takes on waking. We have a subtle body that goes to heaven and dream, even inside of 24 hours, not just inside of a 100-year lifetime. And then we have a causal body that where thoughts disappear, vibrations go away, and the buddhi stops thinking, intelligence stops, and everything is in a perfectly a perfect state of abeyance, where just the light of consciousness is shining there without any impositions, without any conditionings, without any sublations, without any vibrations, without anything that has to do with seeds. The seeds have been rendered uh, without germination, without the potential to germinate. So there you see them falling into the mind all the time. See, they're existing there all of the time, and you're getting everything you want in heaven out of that state, and everything you want in heaven is coming to earth, and you're trying to get that from the dreaming state. And this is a 24-hour process, and it's also a 100-year process. It's also a 100-lifetime process for people who don't waken up to the fact that beyond dreams, deep sleep is Turiya. And that's how consciousness will absorb everything of the three states back to samadhi. It has to do it consciously. So consciousness has to be here, it has to be shown here, and it has to shine here. And then all three of those states are taken back into what's called samadhi. Buddha was looking for it for 48 days as he sat under the bo tree. Muhammad was looking for it out in the desert as he walked and sought for it. Christ was looking for it on the mountain and in the gardens of Gethsemane when he tried to meditate on it. That's what they were trying to bring back to humanity with their own deepest contemplations and meditations, was this beauty of everything that's beyond the three states that is constantly taking people in these cycles of birth, life, death, and rebirth, without knowing that there's a stable consciousness, call her the mother if you want, that's existing, pre-existing, and existing after all of those movements of the mind. These are dreams of the mind, dream number 1, dream number 2, and the dreamless state of the mind that Ramana Maharshi talked about when he was on earth in the body. And you must awake from all three of them to that yogic insomnia that these great souls have, that we admire so much about them. They last forever. How many billions of souls have been forgotten? But no, never forget Christ for 2,000 years. You'll probably not forget Christ at the end of an age when a new age comes back. People are thinking Christ, or they're thinking, who is that person I love? And it's the same with Buddha for the East and Krishna for India and so forth. Is that these are beings that transcended the the three states of their consciousness called Jagrat, Swapna, and Sushupti in the ancient seed words of Sanskrit. They transcended that process and realized themselves in Samadhi, the fourth state called Turiya. And so there you see it. How do they remain aware of it? Right there. The word, Turiya. It's associated with the word in its unmanifested state. So in the beginning was the word was God, and was with God, and the word was God, was how that got put later. That's where illumined souls, rishis, and yogis uh, be, remain aware of their true nature at all times, even when they come down into the waking state or into this world where people are seeking lands, resources, wealth, power, and pleasure, and not seeking God. It's how they remain aware of their true nature and remain equanimous, right? They won't fall out of that. Oh, how can I fall out back into the machinations of Maya and the coverings of samsara and the attractions of nature? How can I fall away from that when I've realized this eternal Brahman in my fourth state of awareness? So at the fourth state, you have those souls. In the deep state, you have the seeds for goddesses and devis. The heaven-bound ancestors and the pitris are in the dreaming state. And down here, there's poor human beings who believe that only the waking state is real and only the physical matter is what they want. So by degrees, then, if we become aware of our states of Jagrat, Swapna, and Sushupti going into Turiya, then we can replace this idea that the negativities of the mind are real, that fear, doubt, and ignorance are real, and they can do anything to help to hurt us and disturb our atmic equipoise. See, nothing can disturb that. We're impervious to that. And so that's a mental asana you want to take up, imperviousness to the suggestions of Maya. And there you see the individual mind here, the collective mind here, and of course the cosmic mind as it realizes everything in the Mahat in deep sleep. So you can study this chart more. I think we have probably run out of time. So we can end the series, the two-class series here, as Vivekananda says about this. How could a perfect God have been dreaming? He never dreams. Truth never dreams. The very idea is absurd. So from dreams awake, from bonds be free, know the truth. Thou art he, thou art she. That is, those souls who have taken on masculine form are Shiva. Those souls that have taken on feminine form are Shakti. The combination of Shiva and Shakti leads, and the realization of that leads them beyond dualities, all dualities, into the oneness of Brahman and its realization. So from mundane dreams and dreams essential, dreams of bliss and nightmare central, dreams of bondage, dreams of freedom, dreams exciting, dreams of tedium, wake up from all dreams into this insomnia of yoga, that that beings float on, like this Ekarnava, the ocean of subtle existence. They're aware of the backdrop of Mother's wisdom behind everything. These are great principles and great truths that we have to put together that support all principles, whether they're the Purusha and its sentient side, or whether it's Prakriti and its insentient side, what I started off chanting today. Mano na buddhi sharira indriyam tanmatram bhutani na bhuta panchakam. Those 6 things cover the whole network of insentient principles, all the way down to the element earth. And the soul, the Purusha, stands back and sees that process go from waking, dreaming to deep sleep with its own consciousness, with seeds that get watered and then get dissolved. And all the time, the negativities of the mind get tucked back into the bed of the mind. Therefore, you have a conclusion of the great seers that the Divine Mother is shining rays for us, yogas, upon this propensity of the mind to dream, and dream availed of seeds that are full of negativities, and therefore these negativities are getting expressed out here in our waking state. We can do away with that by living consciously here in the waking state, also taking our dreams and making them subject to the great wisdom that we learn here from the great souls. Those happen to be everything that we need to consider in order to render all 3 states free of all negativities. Vacham niyacham mani tam niyacham buddhaudiyam yachacha buddhi sakshini tam chapi purnatmani nirvikalpe vilapi shantim parm vidbhajasva om. The practitioner of blissful dissolution must first join the word to the mind, then join the mind to the intellect, then join that blissful intellect to the ego to the witness, and that ever pure witness to Brahman. Brahman is the self in all. By joining in this way, one enjoys eternal peace and ecstatic bliss. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat.